On this episode of Deep Thrones, we review A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Season 1, Episode 4, 7. We watch as Dunk faces the Targaryen Council to determine his fate. We learn a little bit more about a trial by seven, and we all watch as Sir Lionel Baratheon knights Raymond Foss away, plus many more hilarious segments. Winter is here.
Check out the hand, switch, shoes on swoosh. Hitters don't miss. Already just added a ton of y'all to my list. Bitch, death wish. Not to be messed with, tested quiz. They shooting shots, hitting bricks. We testing the kids.
Welcome to Deep Thrones, the most entertaining podcast in the world of Ice and Fire. I'm your host, Sims. I'm back. What's up?
Hey,
My other host,
Chris.
Sheedy's here. What's up?
How's it going? How's it hanging? How you doing?
I'm doing well. It feels good to be back. But wouldn't feel right without kicking off the pod with a big thank you to Ken's, our third member of the podcast, for stepping up last week. She crushed it.
You did an amazing job. She was awesome. The box wine segment was a hit, following in your footsteps, but she provided great insight, and she's the third member of our team, and to step up in a pinch like that, she knocked it out of the park.
She did. She did. So thank you, Ken's. I know you're listening. More than welcome to join anytime you want. Throw some questions in. Sheedy, you got to tell her, don't talk over us.
Yeah, that's
You
it.
got to
That's the
get,
number one
can't,
rule.
can't.
Can't talk over us. We used to
Yeah.
have we've had many guests that have, and you don't see them around these parts anymore.
But no, in all seriousness, Ken's, you crushed it. I think actually, why don't we talked about our Super Bowl picks a couple weeks ago. I think now since I had some notes from last episode where you guys had some questions about lore and history and stuff, so I just wanted to kind of hit on those really quick. Are
Do
you
it.
cool with
This is
that?
a Westeros podcast. Let's
All
stick
right.
to it. Chris listened last week, messaged me and Kinsey in the Deep Thrones chat and said, like, hey, this is perfect. Like, I'm actually hearing it as a listener and hearing areas where I can fill in some stuff. So this is where I'm excited.
All right, perfect. So toward the beginning of the episode, Egg was training with Thunder, the horse. And it seemed like there was some confusion on like, is Thunder a war horse? Like, why does he need to be trained? Is he a packing horse? So Thunder is a war horse. It was the one that Sir Arlen used toward the end of his life in tourneys, and then Dunk used also as a squire when he was participating in tourneys. Thunder hasn't been active in a little while. So with Dunk being super depressed, I think kind of questioning, why he had gone through all this after people didn't even remember who Sir Arlen was and all that, right? He's having a lot of uh Jon Snow syndrome, I think, going on.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Egg took it upon himself as a self-starter to get Thunder back into shape. And so that's what we were seeing at the kickoff of that episode 3. And then we also saw Robin Reisling, who we'll see later on. We'll talk about later on in this episode as well, but
So
crazy dude.
not Riesling.
Actually, it might be. I'm trying to remember how they
I
said
think
it
it is
on the,
Riesling because I said it
yeah.
live as Riesling, and they were like, "Isn't that a drink? Isn't that's like a yeah?"
And then another thing, they had multiple songs throughout the last episode too. One of them mentioned the red grass field, and that was probably the third or fourth mention that we've seen throughout the 4 episodes. Um, Great timing on that. We have a Westeros History Minute on the Blackfire Rebellion later in this episode, so make sure you perk your ears up for that. It's incredibly important to this story and then the next 2 seasons that we'll be seeing. So more to come there. You mentioned Florian and Jonquil, right? That was another
Yes.
song in the play that we saw. So Florian the Fool is one of the most famous stories that we see throughout the Game of Thrones books, throughout Dunk and Egg, all the Westeros series. And it's really relevant to what we saw in episodes 2 and 3. Dunk kind of feeling like a fool, right? Like, what am I doing here? This is a long shot. I'm even awkward with this girl I'm talking to. And we see that Jonquil says, all men are knights, all men are fools. So she's not really concerned about the difference between status. It's, how do you show up in your conversations, how you carry yourself for people who are weak, who need to be protected. And so, it kind of looks like it's just a play or a song if you don't really understand where it comes from, but it's super relevant to the story that we're seeing played out, with Florian being a fool, wishing he was a knight, and then saving Jonquil in a knightly fashion. So super relevant story.
It's all great. Yeah, it's sort of interesting the more I've gotten into the lore of Westeros too. It's crazy. Like Game of Thrones hardly ever mentions the Blackfire rebellions, and I feel like for the next 60 years of history from Dunk and Egg up until Robert's Rebellion, that's like all Westeros is entangled with. Isn't it
Yeah, I
like
mean,
constant?
there's five total over 5 generations. So the first one happens right before Dunk and Egg, and then even in Game of Thrones, the books, there's a Blackfire pretender who is
Young
across
Griff?
the, yeah, young Griff, who was in Essos and then crosses the Narrow Sea supposedly in Winds of Winter. I mean, we don't really know how that ends, but because George doesn't want to finish writing the books. But yeah, super relevant. And you mentioned last week that in the books, Florian the Fool was also mentioned a lot because Sansa always talks about Florian and Jonquil.
Doesn't shut the fuck up about him.
So,
Any Sansa scene, it's all about Florida and Jonquil because she's like getting rescued where I'm at in the books right now. She's getting rescued by that Sir Dantos. Is that his name?
yep,
Something, yeah.
yep,
So constantly she calls him like her
Florian.
Florian. Yeah.
Yeah. It is for people who are obviously tuning into a Westeros World podcast, like you're interested in that stuff. If you had to add a background story about like every play and song that appears throughout the series, like people would probably be like, I'm not watching this. This is just too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. There's a good one about
So,
that Night's Watchman, Bale the Bard. Is that what it was? That's a good one as well.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with it ends up being the King of the North.
Yeah. I think
Hmm.
what helps for us too, as fans of the lore of this show, is that like we're both fans of real life history. We're both history nuts. And this
Hmm.
show, George R. R. Martin created a history for it's just easy. It's fun to enjoy when it's like you
Hmm.
can learn history of a fake world.
There's layers to everything, which is I don't know how he keeps up. Even the show writers, like before we recorded this, we just talked about like how they're enhancing everything that's in these novellas that I've read so far. And even Game of Thrones, especially toward the end, like the changes and the differences started taking away from the quality, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we started to see that quite a bit in season 2 of Fire or not Fire and Blood of House and the Dragon.
Yeah.
So this one I've just been like pleasantly surprised with all the little differences are enhancing what's in the books and not taking away, in my opinion.
100% agreed. 100%. Couldn't have said it
Um,
any better.
And then these are just like smaller things. Like you mentioned, was it dumb that Dunk didn't know that challenges were on day 2 as opposed to like the lords and nobility being featured on day 1 of tourneys? In the books, he does know that, and it's like one of those things where he kind of says it in his own head, like, "Oh, I'm waiting until day 2." I think him not knowing and them talking about it in the show was a way to
Give it to the
like tell the
audience.
audience.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Um, what else do I have on here? So this is a really small one. I know I'm nitpicky here, but like I'm Professor Mims at the moment.
Do it.
Uh, Valar is actually second in line. Maekar is not second in line. So
That's right.
um, Valar is Prince Baelor's son. So it all runs through that line now.
Gotcha.
I'm
That's right.
assuming you might have had a Freudian slip when you said Maekar because you might know some things about the Targaryen timeline in the future.
No, I just think I genuinely didn't know how it worked.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll leave that. And then you guys mentioned I had some thoughts on the way that the character Arian Brightflame is presented. Uh,
I didn't want to speak for you, but I put it out there.
yeah, I'm a book purist in this sense. And I understand, right? Like the dark armor looks cool, looks very Batman-y, it looks very like dark dragon and
Yeah.
scary looking, but Arian Brightflame like wore orange, yellow, red, like that's where the nickname comes from. He had long silver locks. Like it was, you know, one of those where you could think like maybe he's more of a pretty boy prince and then like he's just like an asshole
Yeah.
as opposed to kind of how he's presented in like a darker fashion on the show. So I don't know. I think the Bright Flame nickname doesn't really make much sense if he's just like, a regular guy.
Targaryen. Yeah, I agree. I think his portrayal of the character, like how the actor is making like his choices and how he is, is really good. Like I mentioned last week when Dunk punches him, he said, "I didn't want to be mad. I almost wanted to be like, wow, you did that. Wow,
Yeah.
like, crazy
I
that you
actually
did that."
I agree with you. I do. The actor's doing a great job. The costumes could have been better in my opinion.
I do agree though that the show having no long-haired Targaryens was a weird choice. You got to give us one or two. Give us some long. One of them has to have a lot.
Darren does. Darren does.
True, true, and
Darren the
he's
drunk.
awesome. I like Darren actually. I'm in on Darren.
A little bit of background on Humphrey Harding. So he has been a champion in multiple tournaments leading up to this point. So someone who was born kind of lower level on the nobility charts, not a great house, not a name that we know, Harding.
No.
But Humphrey Harding was one of the best knights that were active at this time. So Arian going up against him and lowering uh the what do you call those, lances,
Yeah.
and taking out his horse was, not just because he's kind of a dirty, cheating, conniving guy. Like that was a intentional decision because he thought that he
Wow.
might lose against Humphrey Harding.
Gotcha. Okay, and it's in that, and we'll get into the episode, but that guy clearly hasn't forgotten that.
Hmm.
Love that.
And then Egg gets super triggered by it because, Dunk's first reaction is, oh, it must have been a mistake. Like he's a prince of the royal blood. He wouldn't do this. And Egg knows exactly the type of person Aryan is, and he's been traumatized by Arian in the past. Like we find that out in this episode with some of the things that Arian's done to him. So Eggs at that point, I think, is even thinking about revealing who he is and just going straight after Arian and calling him out for that BS, but decides not to in that moment. So just a little bit more context around that moment from last week.
Great stuff, man. This is why people listen. At the end of the day, it's because it is a vast world, and it's like what's the biggest complaints of why people don't want to watch Game of Thrones is like, oh, it's so intimidating. That's what this podcast does, is it helps to explore these characters a little bit, explain what's going on the outside, so it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, hell yeah. Well, we got a whole nother episode to cover too.
I know. Should we get into it?
Let's run through it.
So did we have
Oh,
a this was
yes, yes. I can't
potential
forget the
review of
review
wine?
here. Okay, so this week, since Kinsley stepped it up a bit with the box of wine,
Yeah.
I had to one up her here. So, courtesy of one of my coworkers, Justo, he's the man. He got me this tequila from Mexico, from Jalisco, Mexico, Maestro Dobel.
Wow.
It's fine. You can see I've already done some damage to this thing.
It's a beautiful
Uh,
bottle.
but this is actually from their distillery in Jalisco, so it's fresh from the source. So
Wow.
we're gonna give it a shot here.
So he's taking a sip. For those of you listening, he is now taking a sip and he's going to give his review now.
That's that's smooth. The fact that you can just drink neat tequila, not have a face, not have a choke or anything.
Beautiful. See, he's taking another sip.
Smoky till it's been aged just the right amount of time.
You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
You can tell the agave is 100% pure. Um, No, no. Honestly, though, very smooth. Again, mainly the fact that you can just like drink it neat and there's no kickback or anything. It's just fantastic. I would give that uh five agave leaves out of five
I love
agave
it.
leaves.
I love
There
it. So
you
I will say, I've gotten, this is not even a joke. I've gotten multiple texts from different people saying they love the new wine segment.
go. This is what we do. We
Yeah.
give the people what they want.
That's it. We're constantly evolving as a podcast, and now we're going to evolve to a podcast that talks about season one, episode four, was it? And it's called Seven. Of course, as we'll see, um, we'll get into it. All right, so we open the stars in the sky, right? Because Dunk is always sleeping under that tree. Very much a theme of this show, but it turns out that it's just he's in the cell. He's in the cell, waiting to hear what his fate's gonna be.
Yeah, he fucked up. He struck a prince. Can't do that.
Aegon visits him. Of course, Egg is Aegon. Dunk is not having it. He's very mad at Egg for lying to him. He thinks it was all a joke because he's a big dumb hedge knight. Egg essentially is just giving him like, like, listen, I wanted to be a squire. Daron was going to hide at the end until the tourney was over. He was supposed to be Daron's squire, who was the drunken brother.
Hmm. And I love this scene because last week it was pretty much a lovey-dovey, brotherly love type story between Dunk and Egg. And we all were like, man, this is awesome. We're eating this up. There's high stakes at the end. And then of course the big reveal with who Egg really was. Now we see Egg dressed to the nines in Targaryen black and red. He's got, the brooch on. He's, and Dunk on the other hand is in jail, ashamed of himself. Again, we talked about kind of those feelings that he was having leading up to this with being conflicted about Arlen and Pennytree, and now he's been lied to by pretty much his only other friend that he thought he had, and he feels more dumb about it. So yeah, Dunk is very conflicted, but we see even in the next scene that he forgives pretty quickly.
Immediately. Yeah. Dunk is brought before Baelor before he's brought before anyone else, and Baelor just kind of wants to get the run on what's going on. He tells Dunk a couple of things. One, he kind of chastises Egg in front of Dunk, and he's like, he said, he's like, if Arion was being mean to those puppeteers, Egg should have come to me. And Egg said, there was no time, whatever. Because he said, he's like, it was no kindness of him to get you involved, Dunk. Like, he essentially got you in this, and now there's not like my hands are tied. But Baylor also shares the information that Daron the drunk, because he's trying to save his own neck, because his father's like, where the hell did your brother go? There's an added layer to this that he also said that Dunk kind of like just took off with Aegon and like kidnapped him.
Yeah, that was a pretty disappointing move from Darren, but he's got a whole list of his own problems, so he wasn't probably trying to deal with some tall hedge knight and sticking up for him.
I bet he'd love some of that fresh agave right now. Daron, he'd be with you right now in his
Darren
cups.
would be going ham.
Oh, dude, he'd be like, give me the bottle. But you're right. We do see Baylor says, Egg, pour Dunk some wine and don't spill it on him. And Dunk said he wouldn't spill. He's a good boy. Like he means no harm. And Baylor has a great line where he's like, one not need intend harm to cause it. It's
Hmm.
like he's great. Baylor's great. Baylor tells Egg to kind of fuck off, and then he kind of is like telling Dunk like, listen, this is how you're gonna play this. He doesn't say it outright. They don't show you him
Yeah.
say it, but Baylor is essentially telling Dunk, "You're going to demand a trial by combat. Arian's going to back down. We're going to wipe our hands of this."
And you can tell from even this scene that Baylor is he understands where Dunk came from and how he was standing up for, the weak and the innocent and those knightly
100%.
vows that they're all supposed to be doing. So he basically says, "How good of a knight are you?" And Dunk kind of, as usual, fumbles over his answer. And then they talk a little bit more. He tells him about his right to request that trial by combat, and then follows up again with, "How good of a knight are you?" And I think that's when Dunk finally gets it. Like, yeah, that's my only route is to do this.
Yeah, and I think Baylor's mind was Arian's not going to want to do that. So it'll just like he'll say, "All right, fine, I'll pull back my claimant," because he says it in the next scene. I also wanted to give a shout out to Kinsey because she last week her you blew it was Tansel for even doing the dragon scene, and Baylor kind of confirmed that.
Yes.
Baylor even kind of
Yes.
said he's like, "Listen, would I have cared? No, it's a bad look."
Yeah. You
They're very
know,
sensitive about the dragon.
I when I was reading that in the books, I was like, it's a very common story.
Definitely.
Sir Selwyn in the mirror shield against the dragon, and he goes in with the mirror shield. The dragon gets confused that he's looking at another dragon, so he doesn't blow fire out. Selwyn gets close enough to stab him in the neck, slays the dragon. It's one of those Florian and the Fools type stories, right?
Yeah.
Um, Knowing that the last Blackfire Rebellion in the Redgrass Field was just a few years before what we're watching,
Right.
um, you probably don't want that play to be your main show.
And the sensitivity of the Targaryens really feeling weak because their dragons died out about 40 years earlier.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a mix of
Mm-hmm.
those things where
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's just a tough look, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I totally agree. It was a great call up by Kins. Dunk then is brought to a larger council that has like Lord Ashford is there, Baelor, Maekar, and Aerion Targaryen. Uh,
Hmm.
and Dunk says, it kind of stutters. He goes, I demand a trial by combat. And Aerion goes, well, I refuse. And Maekar's like, you can't fucking refuse. Just take the hedge knight one on one. Like he's a hedge knight. You're a Targaryen. And Aerion immediately goes, trial by seven.
Yeah. And I think this was a very intentional decision by Arian. Again, yes, he is a shithead, but he seems to be a calculating one, which is almost more dangerous.
Yeah,
The trial by seven, he's betting on the fact that Dunk can't raise seven knights to to come to his cause. Um, which, we see how that plays out later on, but I think it's a very smart move on his part. You don't want to face someone that's way bigger and stronger than you one on one. So what do? You lean on his support, which is none.
exactly. And Maekar even says, what the fuck is a trial by seven? And Baelor sort of explains that he's like, it was brought across the narrow sea by the Andals. And then Maekar says something. He's like, oh, well, if it was the Andals, which does go to show you how the Targaryens feel about like the first men and the Andals and all of them. They're like, we're still the Targaryens at the end of the day. But it's a 7-on-7 tournament because the Andals were the ones that believed in the seven, right? The seven gods, and they
Hmm.
believed that instead of a one-on-one trial by combat, the seven would be honored and thus more likely to intervene, is essentially the concept, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and just a little bit more background on that. Aegon the Conqueror inherited uh the seven gods and that Andali religion because it helped him become more legitimate in the eyes of the seven kingdoms and thus, makes it easier to get people to bend the knee to you. But many of the Targaryens don't really take it as seriously,
No,
especially like in some of the chivalry that we see, right? Like in the Reach and in the Vale, like the Andal culture is so strong.
huge.
But the Targaryens, you see Maekar like, oh, if it was them, almost kind of like joking about it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Dunk goes back to his horses. Raymond is there. He takes him into his tent. He's like, let's stay out of this rain. Raymond Fossaway, of course. Raymond Fossaway's like cousin, Stefan, is super cool and is like, it's messed up what they did to the puppeteers. You have no champions, Dunk. I'll be one of your champions.
we talked about how this show has enhanced some of the content in the books. This storyline, the Fossaways, is one of those areas where I've seen a lot of enhancements, in my opinion. It's unstated where or which side the Fossaways fought on at the Redgrass Field. Were they with the Blackfire Pretenders? Were they with the Targaryens? What I'm picking up on is I'm watching this with Raymond's rant against the Targaryens a couple episodes ago, and then now Stefan being so quickly to take up Dunk's cause against the Targaryens, potentially killing two Targaryen princes in Aerion and Darren. It's starting to kind of uh, snowball for me on like which side the Fussways were on, and it looks like it was the Blackfires.
Definitely. And even Dunk says to him, he says something along the lines of like, it won't look favorably upon you to go against the House of the Dragon. And Stefan goes, what dragons? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't see any
Mm-hmm.
dragons. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Egg shows up with Daron. Dunk just throws Daron down and is about to like cut his throat. Egg is like, don't like I actually like that brother. He's a loser, but he's cool. Like he plays Mario Kart with me and stuff. Uh, Dunk lets him live, and he's kind of like, they can't kill me twice. And Daron like apologizes, but Egg is like, listen, let bygones be bygones. I'm gonna recruit for you. I'm gonna round up some guys, but like we're about saving your neck at this point, Dunk.
The Targaryen Dream Seers, Jon Snow had a little bit of it. Daenerys had a little bit of it. We see a lot of it throughout the lore and history of the Targaryens. And Darren's one where there's a lot of terrible things happening to the Targaryens within his lifetime. And I don't think that he's built to handle seeing all that and not knowing what it means. And so he's a broken man. Like when Dunk was holding the knife to his throat, like he wasn't even scared. He's just like, all right, like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
gonna do it. So you kind of sympathize for him, but uh or empathize, whatever.
both.
Someone
I
correct
do
me on
both.
that.
I'm
Okay.
capable of both.
Okay. But yeah, it's what he says in this scene. He talks about I saw you in my dreams. There's a big, great black dragon that fell over you, but it didn't kill you, but it was dead. And um, again, his dreams come true. He says it. His dreams come true. So we'll see what that comes to mean.
Yeah, and a little bit of context also provided by Egg. Daron is going to be forced to fight with Maekar and Arion. Maekar's fighting with Arion as well, and Arion also has three Knights of the King's Guard. So right now it's 6-2. Dunk has Stefan, and Arion has, of course, his father Maekar, his brother Daron, and three Knights of the King's Guard. Daron even says though, like, I'm not like just hit me on the head and I'll fall over. Like, don't kill me,
Yeah.
don't nothing. Just give me a little punch and I'll be out. I'm not really fighting. Um, Dunk visits the old puppet tent. It's been ransacked a little bit. The puppeteers were smart and got out of there. I think Tansel's life was very much in danger. And Steely Pate says, "Hey, Dunk, come with me. She left your shield with me."
Steely Pate, he has a soft side. Sticks up for the little people. So gave a great deal on that shield upgrade in the armor for a copper. So he's fully on Dunk's side.
I love it. And the shield looks great. It is very, you're right. The was a large
Elm
tree,
tree.
the shooting star,
Mhm.
the red field. It's beautiful. Next, Dunk enters the tourney grounds. He's got a little team together. Stefan did some recruiting. At least Dunk thinks he has that one-eyed guy we talked about, Riesling, the crazy
Robin
guy.
Risley.
Yeah, he's got the dude with the broken leg who was fucked over by Arion,
Humphrey Harding.
Humphrey
hmm
Harding, and he's got a dude with the yellow mustache.
Humphrey Beesbury.
You
Two
got
Humphreys.
two Humphreys, the Humphrey twins. And then he's got Lionel Baratheon. He's got Lionel Baratheon, and he's hyped. He's like, wow, those guys plus Stefan. Wait, how much that would have given him six, right? So,
Yeah, six. Yeah.
so he's all
hmm
set. Lionel comes up to him and he's like, "Man, I'm glad Stefan recruited you." And Lionel goes, "Who the fuck is Stevran?" He's like, "Your boy came and got all of us." And Egg actually, it turns out, recruited the team.
Egg was putting in work overnight. The guy is he's a self-starter, right? Like he's very, 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 very low down in the line of succession. So you could think like he could be a Darren who doesn't care about anything, or an Aryan who's kind of a shithead. But Egg has proven himself to be very capable in a lot of different ways. So good, cool to see him get involved.
I like calling him a self-starter. That in my head, Egg is
He
like, I
is,
squared for a hedge nut. Here's what it taught me about B2B sales.
dude. I was gonna say, yeah. And then so now Dunk is down only one, or
No,
so he thinks. Only
Arian
one
has six
night.
as well. Dunk thinks like, oh, I got six. He has six. Maybe he couldn't get another one. He's on the field talking to Raymond about it, and then Stefan comes up. He's like, Raymond, my helm. Raymond gives it to him, and he goes, like, Dunk is like, did you get any luck recruiting? Like, Ed got all these guys. Did you get any? And he goes, oh, I'm fighting for them. It turns out that Arian had this ploy with Stefan to convince Dunk that he would do all that so that Dunk wouldn't recruit, so he'd never have a team.
Yeah, again, this is another area where I think it's enhanced and some things are filled in from the books. We didn't really get an explanation as to why Stefan jumped sides. You just kind of assumed that he wanted to go with the winning side. There would be some sort of like titles or gold or something that was slid his way. And in this scene, Stefan straight up says, you know, I wouldn't be a lord otherwise if I fought with Sir Dunk. And so there clearly was some bribery from
Oh
Aryan
yeah.
or someone in the Targaryen party, which makes a lot of sense to me. Why would you go up against those overwhelming odds if you could get an easy lordship out of it?
Yeah, I mean, and Raymond is incensed. He's the squire to Sir Stefan, his older cousin. He's like, you traded in your honor for this, and he essentially says, "Shut up, Raymond. Fetch my horse." He says, "Fetch it yourself." They push each other. Raymond turns to Dunk, and Dunk's like, "Well, we're lost. I need two now." And Raymond goes, "Knight me, knight me."
Mhm.
Raymond takes a knee. Lionel walks up. He's like, "He's telling the truth, man. You're fucked. You better knight him." And Dunk's about to do it, but I think Dunk also it hints again that Dunk wasn't knighted because he clearly doesn't know
Yes.
the words.
Yes.
Right? A horn
Yes.
blows and Lionel goes, "You go because you have to go talk to the Targaryens to prepare for this. I'll give Squire Raymond his knighthood." But right?
It is the books don't lean into this as much as the show does. Like they're really making it seem like Dunk was not knighted.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that angle because, knowing that he ends up being like one of the most legendary Kingsguard knights is like really cool if he wasn't even worthy enough to be knighted, and now he's, a model for all knights to come after him. So
He's a
I
model for
like that they're leaning.
he's a model for Silicon Valley. You fake it till you make it.
Yes. Dude, we got all these LinkedIn tips coming here.
This is
Come to
great.
Deep Thrones for everything you need
Do you remember when we were the DTP business podcast after
for
Game
like
of
half a
Thrones?
day.
We did a lot of Instagram posts. We did zero podcasting about it. Um, so
But and then so just really quick on that same point though, I think from that scene, Lionel kind of looked at him like not, he it almost kind of hinted that Lionel was like, oh, you weren't knighted, but it's cool, we're homies, so I got this.
I don't think Lionel cares. Yeah, I agree. He's
Yeah.
like, I'll take care of it. You get out of here. It's a great scene. They do it really well. It's on par with like Brianna Tarth being knighted, which was like one of the real highlights of a pretty rough season, an undeniably rough season of Game of Thrones. And he does like a sword thing, and in the name of the father and the name of the mother, and he's doing all that, and it's very cool. And Raymond is stepping up. It's an awesome scene.
And this scene's also underneath all this, the origin of the red apple fossways and the green apple fossways.
Really?
So from this point on, it used to just be, there was one house fossaway. Now Sir Stefan is lord or founder of the red apple fossaways, and Raymond is the first of the green apple fossaways. And so by the time we get to Game of Thrones, they're completely separate and they kind of have a rivalry against each other still to that day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So Dunk is essentially told we have six, you have seven, whatever. We'll fight you with six. They're told it's like against the rules. It has to be 7-on-7. So Dunk is forced to forfeit. He says to Lord Ashford, "May I please have a minute to just give a speech here to try to rouse up one more guy." Um, he gives a nice speech just about how he was only protecting the innocent. Like, your sons will remember your example. And the brute of Bracken, they call him, stands up and he just like farts, and everyone laughs at Dunk because it's a little tongue in cheek of like no one cares, buddy. And then Dunk gives like a stronger push of like his honor. We saw it all on the commercials. His courage deserted the noble houses of Westeros. Are there no true knights among you?
Mhm. No, again, great scene. This whole by the time they show up to check in for that tourney, I feel like that was maybe some of the best work that I've seen across all these series.
Agreed. Agreed. I think that, yeah. And then the episode ends with Dunk down 7-6. We hear a knock on one of the side doors. The door opens. The Targaryen comes riding in, helmed up. Targaryen takes his helm off, and it's Baelor Breakspear, the hand of the king, the heir to the Iron Throne. And he says, "I will take Sir Duncan's side." The Game of Thrones music slowly starts coming up. Makar says something along the lines of, "Have you lost your senses? He attacked my son." And Baelor says, "He was defending the innocent, as all good knights should. Let the gods decide if he's innocent or guilty." He kind of gives Dunk a look like, "It's on you now, buddy." And then he rides off. The Game of Thrones music now comes to a crescendo. Dunk looks like in shock, but then he rides right after him. And that's where we end season one, episode.
Absolutely, absolutely electric ending. So much like, I mean, from this scene, like I talked about we have the origin of two houses. We have a questioning of if one of the greatest knights of the Seven Kingdoms is even a knight. We have, the fate of the Targaryen succession playing out in front of us in the next episode. There's just like so much gravity around this episode and really this series, but I think it all culminated kind of here and then in the next episode. So couldn't say there's just no negative notes for me on this one.
The use of music, the use of just like we talked about this before we started recording in our pre-production of like there's no dragons. There's no Battle of the Bastards here. And yet when Baelor says that and the music starts, you're like, "Oh, this was amazing. It was such a great
Mm-hmm.
character show." The first episode when he takes that dump after the music, and you're like, "Okay, it's different." But then at the end of the day, the showrunner said, he's like, "There was no other music that we could play at the end there." He's like, "That was when you're like, oh, Game of Thrones is back. This is Game of Thrones, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
so well done." Um, I, I I'll start the rating if you don't mind.
Let's do
I
it.
gave it a 9, but the truth is, I had no notes. Like what? I feel like I'm gonna get blasted if I give it a 10. You know what I mean?
It's yeah. No, I agree.
Are
It's
societal
giving a
pressures
10 is
getting to
tough.
us?
A 10 is tough. A 10 is saying perfect across the board, which for what was in it, it was perfect. I think the one thing that was missing is what we're going to see in the next episode, which is the major clash between these 14 warriors.
Agreed. Agreed. And also, like, you could argue that the fart part was like unnecessary, or just, I guess it did add a little bit of it kept the show's tone. You know what I mean? They've developed that
Yeah.
tone. If all of a sudden out of nowhere the show just went hard serious, you'd kind of be like a culture shock. So I guess that's fair.
hmm I also gave it a 9 for all the same reasons. And we talked about all the different I just love how the lore is playing so heavily into the show, but you also don't need to know it to be super engaged. So, yeah, big fan of what they've done so far.
It was awesome. It was awesome. Why don't you start us off? Best line, Yas Queen. What did you think?
Yes. So my best line was the obvious one. I think you might have the same one, but at the end, I will take Sir Duncan's side from Baylor Breakspear.
Love that.
Got chills.
Do you want me? Oh, mine was, are there no
Oh,
true
yeah.
knights among you? I went with that one
Okay.
because it
Okay.
was in the marketing. I loved his delivery, and it's sort of how Dunk I think sees knighthood, even though he might not technically have it. It's how he sees the idea of knighthood of like I don't even he to Dunk is one of those people who can't even fathom that he did something wrong because he's like I did exactly what you're supposed to do, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right, it's probably the Baylor one technically.
Uh, my Yas Queen was the Brood of Bracken, so Sir Otho Bracken farting, in response to Dunk's impassioned speech.
Gee, yeah. I mean, what a piece of shit. But also, so question: Brackens and Blackwoods in House of the Dragon. The Brackens are what side? They're the Rhaenyra side, or
The
no?
the Blackwoods are Rhaenyra's side, Brackens are the Greens.
Oh, then I agree. I take back what I
Yeah.
said. I love that scene, and I respect the fart. Um, my Yas Queen was also not a line; it was an action. Very similarly, it was when Arion is cracking like the nuts with his sword, and the one like shoots across the table and falls on the ground, and he looks
Mhm.
at Lord Ashford, and he kind of like points down, and Lord Ashford just like is kind of like what, and he like gets on the
It was
ground and is
great.
crawling around looking for it. That was a great scene. Um, so from there we go to hottest moment, and I had two. And we
Okay.
might probably have the same ones. So you do your
So you
hottest
want to
moment
start?
first. You do your own moment.
Okay,
You go.
okay, I'll lead with mine. So mine was when Darren was explaining that his dreams come true to Duncan Egg. And I did the quote earlier, but I've seen you, sir, and a fire, and a dead dragon, a great beast with wings so large they could cover this meadow. It had fallen on top of you, but you were alive, and the dragon was dead.
Oh, and literally hot because he saw fire. That's good. That's real good. That's on the nose.
Mhm.
My hottest moment, I had two. Baylor taking Sir Dunk's side, but I also really liked Lionel knighting Raymond. Thought they shot that
Yes.
really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, oh, big segment, the Westeros History Minute fan vote segment. Before we get into this week's Westeros History Minute with the Blackfire Rebellion, Chris, my sigils last week were a hit. Everyone loved them. Everyone loved the sigils that I chose.
Everyone loved
I
them.
forgot the three I chose. No, I chose the flayed man banner.
Hmm.
And my number one was, of course, the three-headed green dragon of House
Yeah, that was
Targaryen. Let's
that
go.
was ridiculous. That was
Targaryen slash
ridiculous.
Hightower, dude.
That was ridiculous. So my top three, the Flayed Man is maybe number one. I mean, it's hard to beat that one. Um, I also love the black three-headed dragon, the Black Fires. That one's pretty sick.
That's good. That's a good one.
Um, and then I would probably hmm. I mean, there's so many options. With number three, I would probably go with House Valerian, the seahorse.
Oh yeah, that's a cool
Gonna
one.
love that one.
Yeah, those are
Uh,
good ones. But this week's Westeros History Minute, Blackfire Rebellion, a little brief history of it. Was a tight vote, but it won. Chris, tell us about the Blackfire Rebellion. Zzz.
I'm so pumped at this one because I was going to talk about it today anyways, because at this point it's been referenced so much in the show that we needed to give some background on what it is. So the Blackfire Rebellion refers to five different rebellions over five generations in Westeros. The Blackfires are an offshoot of House Targaryen. So the origination was with one of many bastards of King Aegon the Fourth Targaryen, aka Aegon the Unworthy. That bastard's name was Daemon Waters, then known as Daemon Blackfire after the legitimization. But the problem was he also had an oldest legitimate son who was named Daeron the Second Targaryen, who happens to be the king of what we see now in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. So Daeron the Second is Baelor Breakspear's dad, who's the king right now. So anyways, Darren and Damon are kind of pitched against another. Darren has always had beef with his dad, Aegon the Unworthy, because he goes against his corruption, he goes against his greed, goes against his overall bad decision making. And Damon, on the other hand, was one of Aegon's most gallant knights. He had the Targaryen look. He was big, strong, long silver hair, won a ton of tourneys, all that stuff, and he wielded the ancient ancestral Targaryen sword Blackfire, which of course was the sword that Aegon the Conqueror used when taking over the Seven Kingdoms. So, a lot of the realm was kind of behind Daemon because he was so gallant and charismatic. And Darren was the opposite of that. He was bookwormy, he was too modest, too straight edged, all that type of stuff. Aegon the Unworthy dies. Daemon usurps the throne, kicks off what is the first Blackfire Rebellion, and then that culminates at the Battle of the Redgrass Fields, which we could have a whole segment on that. We should have a whole segment of that on its own, probably next week, which I'd love to get into. But essentially, that ends up being a decisive victory for the Targaryen loyalist, and Daemon Blackfire is slain on that Redgrass Field. So that's the precursor to what we're seeing in Dunk and Egg.
Wow.
Um, I believe someone fact checked me on this, but I believe the Redgrass Field was 5 to 10 years, if that, before what we see in Dunk and Egg. So
It would sound about right.
it's very fresh, and like you can tell some of the dialogue that we see in the show that people are still, if you were on the Blackfire side or if you were on the Targaryen loyalist side, you still have very bitter feelings for the others.
These battles, though, too. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I'm just thinking about them because I've done some research on them. They don't. They're not like happening on mainland Westeros, right? Don't they usually happen on like the Stepstones or in Essos, or do some of them actually happen in Westeros?
In the Reach.
Oh,
So
wow.
that one, yeah, it was mainland Westeros, and it's not far from Ashford. It's not far from where season two will be the second book of this story. As a matter of fact, that one and the third book lean in more to the Blackfire theme than this first one does. So it's
Nice.
very important to reference to understand the motives of some of these characters, and also to just understand like where the Targaryen house is at this point. Like when we saw them in House of the Dragon, there's there's too many heirs. They ended up fighting each other, right?
Yeah.
Like and now it's like, well, things are going to kind of start getting thinned out. But
Start thinning the herd a little bit. Start thinning the
yeah,
pack.
yeah. But so
Um,
yeah, that's the history of the Blackfire Rebellion, the first one.
that's great. No, that was amazing insight. Thank you for that. That's stuff that, I mean, really sets up where we are in the world. It explains the motivations maybe of an Aryan Targaryen a bit more. Obviously, we don't agree with those motivations, but still, you can see the fragile nature of their rule at this moment.
Hmm.
George's writing is just so layered with that stuff. Like he's so good, and it's like it's crazy. I mean, but moving on to the
Most people, well, I shouldn't say that because you have your Joffreys and your Ramses and all that stuff. But most people, when they do bad things or like some of those really ugly things that we see throughout these series, there's there's usually some sort of motivation that you can sympathize with,
yeah, and then
so,
like
and this is
a
one of them.
prevailing guilt afterwards though too, which shows the vainness of Arion is that he kind of doesn't care.
Yeah,
You look like look at a Tyrion who killed Tywin, who tortured him his whole life, and yet it like wrecks Tyrion that he did that.
yeah.
You know. Um, Next segment, you blew it last week. I didn't blow it. I fixed my error. and I will again this week. I'll start. My, you blew it, Stefan Fossaway. You're a lying piece of shit, Stefan. So, Stefan Fossaway,
You blew it.
you blew it.
We love you, buddy, but you blew it.
I don't love him. I don't
Yeah,
love him.
well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we don't love him. We don't love him. All right, my you blew it was Arian with the trial of seven strategy. The whole play was that Dunk would not be able to get six other knights to fight with him. Turns out your own uncle's on that side, buddy. So Arian Targaryen.
You blew it.
You blew it. And I remember I'm so much better at it now because I realized that Zoom doesn't pick it up, so I got to just edit it in. So it's
Yeah.
weird. So we just got to
Mhm.
pause for dramatic effect. Um, the final segment, trial by combat. This one, listen, let's be honest, guys. The Super Bowl is the time you're listening to this, it will have happened. The time we're recording this, it has not yet happened. All right. So this isn't, we're not giving you advice on who we think is going to win because we have no clue. All right. Uh, Saints Bears, book it. But this, my story, because I like to mix reality with fantasy, because that's what we do on this podcast, is all right. So here's the core premise. During the Super Bowl, a disputed penalty in the final seconds triggers a forgotten clause buried inside the original NFL charter. All right. The league was not founded only as a business, it was founded as a ritual contest of gods and men. And when a champion is decided by a call so corrupt or disputed that the spirit of competition is violated, the old law returns. Not overtime, no replays, but a trial by seven. Seven guys on each side, right? The commissioner is handed a sealed ancient document. It's never opened until this Super Bowl. And what happens is, essentially, what happens is seven guys from each team goes head to head, and it's mostly jousting. But I also would like to throw in some more football related stuff, like the old XFL kickoff thing, where they would start and run after the ball and like dive on top of each other.
Oh
Throw that
yeah.
in there. And let's see, I got some other good stuff in here. So yeah, the seven has to be like you have to have one star player, one coach, a fan, a staff, a former legend, someone from the hot dog stand, and the mascot. So those are the seven you have to have, and then those seven partake in various nightly activities against each other, and that's how we'll determine the winner of the Super Bowl. I'm calling this, and it's going to be a film. Obviously, it's not going to be a real, like Super Bowl, and I'm calling it the Trial of 7 Yards.
Okay. You know, the funniest part maybe about all this is like seven on sevens in football exist and they are less there's less contact in seven on seven than there is in 11 on 11.
It's safer.
So it's yeah, so it's funny that your version is like more violent, but the actual seven on seven is like, pretty chill.
Yeah, they got to do like they have to like the Colts are like literally riding the Colt mascot and battering rams and stuff. It'd be great. The Trials of 7 Yards, because the Super Bowl and also because of Dunkin' Egg.
All right. And in theaters this fall, ready
In
PG-13.
in theaters this fall. That one, I'll be honest with you, I never liked it. Wasn't my favorite one, but the Super Bowl's tomorrow, so I wanted to do something football themed. I wasted my good football idea 2 weeks ago, and then I was like, well, now I don't even know what to do. I wish you were here for
No,
Westeros workouts. I liked Westeros workouts.
Westeros workouts. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, I need to get some of those in too, but well, you got anything else here? I feel like we covered a lot in this episode.
No, this was a great episode. I have nothing else. I am thrilled with the direction this show is going. We've been burned before. We have 2 episodes left. Let's see how they stick the landing, but the direction that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is going is up. We were all pretty upset about House of the Dragon season 2. It could redeem itself with season 3. We don't know, but to have a show start off like this and be so strong and so true, and also I think the fact that it's one adventure, you know what I mean? We
Yep.
don't have to worry about
Yep.
them fucking up this adventure next season. That kind of makes me feel comfortable.
I saw the casting of the Red Widow, also known as Roanne Weber, Lady Roanne Weber, who's one of the main characters in season two. And I was already like, I'm 100% in. Like she looked like exactly the description in the books. And I'm like, this is spot on. We're already kind of hooked on this, and we know how good the Duncan Egg casting itself was. So it's just it seems like everything's kind of um, following the playbook that's been laid out clearly for them, and that's really all you got to do with a few enhancements.
Yeah, no, well, it's what else you gotta say? We appreciate you guys listening. Hope you're enjoying it as much as we are.
Yes,
Awesome.
sir.
Hey, Daenerys, hit me up. You can take my side.
Whips, check out the hand switch. Shooters on swoosh, hitters don't miss. Aria just added a ton of y'all to my list. Bitch, death wish, not to be messed with, tested quiz. They shooting shots.